Okay, the next item on our agenda is communication, and no one has signed up. So we'll move on to Superintendent's recommendations and reports. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Birding. At this time, I would like to ask Mr. Martin to cover the items listed under Personnel Professional.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Birding and members of the board, I have several items for your consideration this evening under Personnel Professional. Item number 1, extracurricular resignations for 2020-2021, letters A and B. Item 2, employment. Letter A is extracurriculars. There's 1 ESL tutor and 1 substitute nurse. Item 3, an employment correction, letter A. That concludes the items I have for your consideration this evening under Personnel Professional.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to accept those recommendations.
So moved.
Second?
Heard Mr. Begley and Mrs. O'Neill. Is there any questions or comments? Okay, Mrs. Lane, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Begley?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mrs. Shorter?
Yes.
Mrs. Gundrum?
Yes.
Mr. Birding?
Yes. Motion passes.
This time, I'd like to ask Mr. Penny to cover the items listed under Personnel Support.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Birding, members of the board, I have the following items for your consideration this evening under personnel support. Under item number 1, resignations, letters A through D. Under item number 2, employment, letters A through E. This concludes the items I have for your consideration this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Penny. This time, I'll entertain a motion to accept those recommendations.
So moved. Second?
Heard Mrs. Shorter and Mrs. Gundrum. Any questions or comments from the board? Okay, Mrs. Lane, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Shorter?
Yes.
Mrs. Gundrum?
Yes.
Mr. Begley?
Yes.
Mr. Birding?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Neill?
Yes.
Motion passes.